All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Rise Urban Nation. Let me start off with marketing. I know a lot of you out there are doing marketing. And what if your marketing plan wasn't just about visibility, but about clarity, about purpose, about legacy? Because let's be real, a lot of people are posting, a lot of people are promoting, but very few people are actually connecting. Today's guest has spent decades building business, mentoring leaders, and turning vision into results. But what makes his story powerful isn't just success, it's survival, it's reinventing yourself, it's depth. Welcome back to Rise Urban Nation, where we amplify stories that build impact, influence, and legacy. I'm your host, Taryell Simmons. And today, we welcoming back a returning guest, my brother from another mother, someone who's left a mark on season 5, and he's back to take us even deeper. Please help me welcome Phillip Hogan. Welcome, sir.
Oh,
Welcome back
Terrell,
to the
I'm
podcast.
glad to be back, man. Thank you so much for that great intro. So nice of you, and hello to your audience, and can't wait to dive into all the good things that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. Now, since the last time you've been here, you dropped a couple of things on us. You just dropped a book, a podcast,
Yeah.
and so many other things. And I know the last time you were on the show, we talked about service first leadership and
hmm
building strong relationships. But
hmm
today, I want to go deeper with you on what you've dropped with the podcast and the book and
hmm
some of the new things that you're working on and created. So, tell us tell us, when did this podcast and book become a thing? Like, tell me how that came about.
actually, I was contacted in the last quarter of 2025, right, to be a guest on a podcast. And so I said, sure, let's go. And in the conversation, it came up that, would I be interested in being an author? And up until that point, I had really never given it any thought. And I didn't really, I'd said, wow. And so as I thought about it, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The more the clarity really came in. Clarity came into the picture and really said, you know what, you've got something worth writing about. You can write this book, and let's just go ahead and proceed forward. And that's just what I did. So out of that conversation, a book was born, and also becoming a podcaster. Right. I mean, on your
Mhm.
show, I had a great time, and thank you for inviting me back. However, I hadn't thought about actually becoming a podcaster, right? And then after speaking with this gentleman, he sort of laid out really the plan as to what would happen after you become an author, and you should start a show. I said, well, when I looked into it, I said I could do that, right? And so in August of 2025. My podcast, Close the Market Weekly, was launched, and since then we have produced 35 episodes, and we focus on the mortgage industry. And there are our guests are various mortgage pros who come onto the show to talk about the trends and their jobs and their roles that they're seeing in the mortgage industry from their position. So those are the things that we've worked on, and we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I was just joking with him when we were in the green room before we came on, ladies and gentlemen. I was on Amazon. I was looking at your book cover, and I was like, "Man, this book cover looked like $1 billion. Like he looked like a young billionaire on here, like he's a black Warren Buffett or something." And so I like kudos to whoever did your cover of your book. I can't wait to dive into it. What inspired your book? It's called Relentless Excellence. What inspired this book?
My parents, I grew up, thank you for the compliment. And I grew up in Hempstead, Long Island, which is in New York. And I was very fortunate to have two parents that were entrepreneurs. And, my father was the person who was the visionary, and my mother was the accountant, right? So those two created, they were the dynamic duo. And
Mhm.
so we, as children, we had to work. What do we have to do? Offer free child labor, right?
I was the babysitter too. I was the oldest, so I know how that
So you know
goes.
how it goes, right? So it wasn't about getting paid to go to work. It was about
Mhm.
Philip, let's go. We got to go to work, and so working in my family's business, my parents' businesses, I began to see and hear and participate in the development of their businesses. And so, my father, so he spoke in a way where he kind of like spoke in messages, right? He
Hmm.
wasn't a person who really came out and said exactly what he wanted you to know. He sort of like, said it in a roundabout way. And you had to kind of like, look at the end result of what he wanted you to do and say, okay, this is what we want, what I got to get done. So thus the seeds of my entrepreneurial life were 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 put into the soil, and the fertilization of that soil was my parents and the experiences that I acquired working in their businesses, both of their businesses, and one is still in business. One business is still doing very well, and the lessons that I learned. So that was the inspiration. But then, at being 68 when I wrote this book, it's like I've lived so many different chapters, and I'm like, so Philip, let's leave a legacy, man. You could, you've lived long enough, you've gone through some things that people can really benefit from. But if you don't write a book, they won't know what you have done, what your contributions were, and how life has been changed for the people that you come in contact with. And so the book talks about that.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, I'm gonna go back to something earlier you said because you were
Yeah,
saying how you were talking about the whole podcast thing and the
yeah,
book thing, and then how um the gentleman who was talking to you, he laid out this whole plan,
yeah.
and I see in the plan now that you're starting to unfold in front of me as you're talking about it.
Mm,
There's a plan there of not only just legacy, but there's a business plan in there too,
absolutely.
and how. I'm curious because I when we first talked, it was really about your first business.
Mm.
Has your perspective on business changed since now going through this reiteration of yourself and putting these new legacy pieces in?
Yes, I am also the CEO of Signing Services of America. We're a nationwide notary signing service that was established in February of 2016. And when I started, it was like I want to start my business, and it was all gung ho about the business. But over the years, I have developed into, I think, a complete business owner, and part of that process, part of the stages of that process had me go through particularly what two things is marketing and scaling, right? And when I started the business, I had a account that was sending us 5 figures worth of business a month. So I didn't have to really go out and look for business. So, however, as time went on, I realized, well, Philip, if you want to continue to grow, you got to get more business. If you want to continue more business, guess what? You got to find out how to market your business. And what I've learned to do is marketing is not so much about putting something together for everybody. It's like finding out who your avatar client is, right? And once you find out who your avatar population is, then you've got to really tune into what are their needs? What are they looking for? What are their expectations? How, and then can you meet those expectations, right? Some people have to understand, are you B2B or are you B2C? Is your avatar client a business, or is your avatar client a individual? And in whoever it is, then you have to start building that plan that would lead you to connecting to those individuals. So and as the years have come on, I've gotten very involved in social media, because I really have it. That was kind of like my late development in marketing, but I've come to understand how powerful it is. And if it's used correctly, you can really be able to get more business, get more attention, get more visibility, and ultimately become a leader in your space, because now you have, good content out there that is worthy of people paying attention.
Yeah, that's something that I benefit from because I started my podcast as a passion project, and
Hmm.
then from there, it's landed me in conversations in rooms that my feet never touched, but because they found me through some network or some episode or somebody else referred me, I started to be able to do business in a different way that I would have never thought was possible because I didn't have access to those rooms or those conversations or those opportunities. So I appreciate that you bringing that to light. I
Hmm.
want to dive into this title of this book,
Hmm.
Relentless Excellence,
Yes.
because that's a powerful title right there.
Yeah.
Um, Dive into that for me. Like, what is the message behind that title? How did you come up with that title? And why is the message important right now?
Yeah. So how I came up with the title is that not to give too much of the book away, but my paternal grandparents are immigrants from a small island in the Caribbean. And my grandparents came to and settled into New York, and their family members followed after. And as a result, what I come to realize is that my grandparents were responsible for building the migration trail for my relatives from this small island named Montserrat. And in doing so, there was the seed of excellence was born, right? And and you saw the hard work, the commitment, the relentless the relentless desire to get things done. And it wasn't till it was done. It was done. You weren't done until you were satisfied, right? And so there, my parents were obviously descendants of that same type of way of life. And so, of course, what my parents do, they taught it to us. And, my father was the kind of guy where he set the bar high, never told you how to reach it. It's up to you to reach it. And then when you reach the bar, he said, okay, now he raised it another 12 inches and do it again. Right.
Mhm,
And so, what I saw is that, well, this is what was expected of you. This is what was expected of my descendants. And thus, this is what's expected of you. And we're not going to let you back down. We're going to require you to do the grinding work that has been done before you to get what we've gotten. And as the saying goes, if you want what we got, you got to do what we did. And so
mhm,
that's where Relentless Excellence was born. And I was also, born in a time, Terrell, where everyone in my neighborhood was living that life of excellence. The parents,
mhm,
children, my neighbors around the block, wherever, it was everywhere I looked. It was people who were living not so much a contented life, but they were living the life that they wanted, right? And sometimes, you have people have a choice to say, okay, well, this is as far as I want to go down the road. And, I grew up in a community and in a family where we can either do one or two things. We can find a road that will have a short duration or a short time frame or short period, or we can say, you know what? I can get an axe, I can get a shovel, I get a wheelbarrow, and I can build to that road because I see more, I see further down where that road ends. And I want that. I want to go there. I don't want to stop where this road stops. I want to see, I want to keep going. And how far can I go? And that's where Relentless Excellence came from. So everything I do in my life is like, well, you don't stop. You go until you can't go any further. And that's
mhm.
how I got the title, if that makes sense to you and your audience.
No, that makes perfect sense. Relentless about the pursuit of excellence,
Yes.
and I feel like the story you told tells it perfectly about how you kind of really did that through, the guidance and coaching and mentorship of your folks down the road, and knowing your journey not just from here, but in other spaces as well. I remember, I don't know if it was in our last conversation that we had or reading about it. You talked about, if I remember correctly, going from business to addiction to recovery to
Hmm.
surviving cancer,
Hmm.
and I felt that along with the businesses and everything that you've done for Exodus, that's real, like resilience and relentlessness all in itself, getting through all of those experiences.
Hmm.
And I wondered if any of those experiences you had, um from going through all those things,
Hmm.
did that shape your approach to leadership? And not to give away what's in the book, but will we get to read about some of that in the book?
Sure. Sure. So my recovery, and I'm in recovery now for 40 years, and and I have been able to as a result of making that decision to stop to put down the drugs, that is the leader in Philip was born,
Mm,
right? Is that you have to, I think, I think I've learned to live an authentic life, Terrell. And,
mhm,
living an authentic life means that, okay, what is not sitting right within you? And how do you want to change it? And what do you want to change it to become? And you develop a plan, a personal development plan, and then you execute. So my recovery is, as I said, the leader was born, but it was born because I now was able to build a foundation, and from that foundation build upon that. But the foundation that I stand upon is the foundation of determination, of self-determination, right? Of relentlessness, of satisfaction, of knowing that, well, listen, when I was using drugs, I wasn't happy. So if you're not happy, then what can you do to become happy, right? And obviously
mhm.
put down the drugs, and then all the things that comes along with that. And so 40 years later, I look back and I am not the person that I was when I came into recovery. And so in regard to leadership, yeah, when you can really, when you can tell yourself, okay, I want to make a change about something in me, and then you institute a plan to get that done, and you achieve that, that is really, I think, the beginning stages, if you will, of leadership. Because now you've gone through the boot camp of a particular situation. So what better person what better person than anybody else, right? To be able to say, okay, well, these are things that I've done, and this is the results that I've gotten, right? And they work for me. So here, come on, and let me show you what I did, and they'll work for you, right? And so although I'm in business now, the premise of self development is still there. Let me share something here with you, right? Is that
Yeah, go ahead.
you talk about leadership, and so there is a person who works for my company who it was revealed that he has a problem with alcohol, right? And it caused a lot of problems for him. It was causing a lot of problems for me. So what did I say? I said, well, Philip, you can sit on the sidelines and let's see this guy burn, right? Because you know what the problem is, or you can come off the sidelines, disclose your sobriety to him for the purposes of not becoming a friend, but to inspire him, because you could see the greatness in him, but he needed someone who could really help him connect with the greatness in himself. And so I shared that with him. I shared my story of my sobriety, and also of my years of using drugs. And now this guy is doing some phenomenal work, and he's loving life. And it's all because I believe that I decided to use another part of myself. And as a leader, we have to look within ourselves and realize, what can we use to help a person get to the next level? What can we use to help a person become a better employee? What can we use to help a person to become a better individual? And you use it, and you then sit back and see what happens.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. There's so many layers to your story, and it's not just about the building the foundation
Hmm.
and building bricks, as you say.
Hmm.
The other piece of your story that I really love is the transformation piece, because your story isn't just about success; it's about
Mission,
transformation.
yes.
Yeah. Um, let's talk a little bit about that, since we're talking about
Hmm.
adversity, addiction,
Hmm.
and reinventing yourself.
Hmm.
Something that you've been able to do, something you've been able to pour into others,
Hmm.
and I'm hoping that people get this book. So anybody who's looking at
Hmm.
doing any three of those things, they can definitely pull these points out of your book.
Hmm.
Um, let's talk about the depth behind the success.
Hmm.
You've walked through addiction,
Hmm.
you've battled cancer,
Hmm.
you have rebuilt your life multiple times.
Hmm.
What are some of the hardest moments in your journey?
Hmm. Sure. So I think the hardest moment in my journey is one, the passing of my father.
Mm,
And to see a man who I loved, I revered, I would go to the end of the world and back for him, to then see the casket close. And the final time that I look at him is a moment I'll never forget. Um, and so the book is an opportunity to, I wrote the book, and some things happened to me that I really didn't expect. I got in touch with so much information and so many experiences that I was a crying baby. I was boohooing
So you tell me I'm gonna have to get my tissue to read this book now? Gosh, I'm
I,
about to be emotionally right when I get this book now.
man, I tell you, and so many days I had to just put down the pen and finally got to the point where, okay, let's get through this, and we got through it. So I think another moment is when my grandmother died, and I didn't know we had the West Indian heritage. I wasn't. We weren't raised with recognizing and acknowledging that my grandparents are West Indian descent. So when she passed, and I went to the funeral and in the repast, and all of these people in the basement of the church were my family, and I'm like, well, who are these people? I ain't never seen these people before. What are you talking about? This is my cousin. I know the cousins, who they are. That's it, right? And then I came to find out that these were my grandparents' family, and so that moment, I knew I had to go to Montserrat, right? And so I went the next year. I think the next year I got my cousin Butchie, who's in St. Croix, and we went to Montserrat. And that was a moment. I think that was a defining moment in my life, Terrell, because I was in search of my identity. I was in search. I
Mhm.
had so many questions as to who was I? Where did I come from? Why did I think and do the way I did? And then by going to Montserrat, I met my grandparents' family, and I said, "Aha, I got it." And so those are the two transformative moments in my life.
I love that. I love that, and and I think it gives another layer of the foundation of a missing piece that you didn't know was there, but now you get to use that to help complete the story of who you really are, where you're really from, those things that ground you, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Um,
Hmm.
you had gave me some really good advice in the green room, and when we were talking about my gym routine and
Hmm.
everything,
Hmm.
and I noticed now that I'm talking to you now that you are a man of discipline
Hmm.
and good self awareness too, because your advice was spot on too that you had gave me, and I'm curious to know, you know, the that discipline and self awareness, did that come through your journey of going through the addiction? And if so, what did the addiction teach you about
Hmm.
discipline and self awareness?
No, no. The discipline came from being the son of Philip and Helen Hogan.
Shout out to the being the son of of the
Shoot.
Hogans.
What I'm saying? It was so, you didn't have much of a choice in the household that I grew up in, right? It's either my way or no way. And I lived under that. I saw it, and thus it became a part, and then I was in the military. So, I graduated high school and then went straight into the Navy. So the Navy had not really prepared me for life. I mean, my parents gave me the disciplinarian way of life. I think the Navy, if anything, just gave me another level of it. And
Mhm.
so I got a double dose back to back.
Yeah.
17, 18 years living with my parents, then 4 years in the military. That's 22 years of just being disciplined, being a disciplined person. And so it became a way of life. It's just no other way to look at it. And the in business you have to be disciplined, right? So
Mhm.
so for an example, is that when it's time to you know one of the challenges that we experience in my industry is that, okay, sometimes my competitors will lower their fees to get more business, right? Well, I have to be disciplined to realize that, what, I'm not taking that approach, right? I
Mhm.
value the quality of work that we do. I value the staff that work for my company, and I value the vendors that work for my company as well. And so if I have that value, then I self value. I'm not going to accept a lower fee just to get your business, but then I got to turn around and say, well, I can't pay you this kind of money because I'm doing this. Then it kind of like, you devalue yourself as well as the people that are working for you and that are
Mhm.
contributing to your success. So that's where the self discipline really kicks in other areas of my life. It's also, I'm a scuba diver. I'm a certified scuba diver, and
You're a
so
scuba diver too. Is there
yeah,
anything you don't do, sir?
yeah, I do. Yeah, there are. I do have my limits, right? I'm not going to free dive, right? But
Okay.
being a scuba diver, you have to be disciplined, right? To know,
Right.
okay, well, where are we going diving, and what are the conditions, and what's required, right? And once you have the dive plan, you dive the plan, right? So what I mean by that, once you have a dive plan, is that once you develop how you're going to dive and the depth and all of the possibilities that go up, you stick to that. You stay disciplined to the plan that you
Mhm.
developed on the surface, so you can return back to surface. So every area of my life is disciplined, and
Mhm.
and it's just, and that's a part of the relentless excellence. It's like I'm just committed to this way of life, and I find it to be very comforting, rewarding, and it's frustrating when I step out of boundaries here, because that's just not the way that I've learned to live my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I do think, sometimes every time you shift into a new season of your life,
Mm.
you kind of, I feel like you kind of do step out of your boundaries a little bit. I'm not saying that you're not disciplined. You're still disciplined in who you are and the road you take. But isn't there some kind of like you're stepping out of your boundaries when you stepped into these new seasons of life, like going from military to business to that business to school to
Well,
whatever the next
I
thing
think
is.
I think that you have to be adaptable,
Okay.
you know, and so you have we all have our core elements, right?
Yeah.
And so what makes up a person, right? And
Mhm.
I'm not saying that you should deviate, or I deviate from my core, but I certainly can go into a different environment and become adaptable if that's the right environment for me to be in.
So and that goes back to that self-awareness thing. I think I just really love about you is that you know what environments are the right environments for you,
Yeah,
and you kind of stay true to who you are
yeah,
along the way as you're going.
yes.
Um, Going back to the relentless title,
Hmm.
was there ever a moment where you questioned whether you could keep going?
Hell yeah. Yeah. Shoot. As an entrepreneur, yes. Yes. I mean, uh I think the moments where I questioned is in the military, no, I never questioned that. Going after my degrees, I there was never a question there. Working for someone else, working for other companies, it was never a question there. And so, you know, when when um when when I became an entrepreneur for my first business, it was a point in time where I said, man, this shit, excuse the expression, this stuff is hard, right? It's
Mhm,
hard. It's why has it got to be so difficult? I'm out here, being a public servant, providing a service to the community that would benefit those within the community, and I can't get the support. So I had to constantly ask myself, well, Philip, why did you start this? Why did you do this? Why
mm,
did you launch this business? What was your goal? And that really helped to strengthen me, reinforce by my desire to stay true to that. And so with Signing Services of America, I've run into the same moments where, you scale. I heard something where I forget who this quote is, but it says that when you're climbing a mountain, you're really climbing a mountain to only get to the valley of the next mountain, right?
mm,
And so in business, there's going to be these valleys and mountains, and that's just the way it goes. And so
mhm,
if you prepare yourself for that, then I think that you'll be a very great adventurous person. And I'm naturally adventurous, right?
Yeah.
And so I think being an entrepreneur has really fed into my desire to be adventurous and really, find something worth living for, right? In that, as I wrap up here, is that when I work for people, when I work for the New York City government, I saw people coming to work to retire, and
Mm,
I just said, is this what you want to live for? And I knew then that this just wasn't meant for me. And so when the opportunity came to start my first business, I did, and I found that that gave me something to really get up and go after every day. And so
yeah.
being in business has really helped to define my desire to be determined and have that self determination and find a way to win. And being relentlessly excellent is just that, finding a way to win, not giving up and not giving in, but finding that hole, finding the loophole, to finding that moment that, okay, I can extend my road another, half a block or full block. But you got to keep going. And how do you keep going? By telling yourself, I have what it takes for me to get what I want, but I just got to
Mm.
be able to go after it.
That's real. That's real. Um, in my head,
Yeah.
the ADHD moment here, like when you said, "I'm an adventurous brother," I was like, "Yeah, you got to be an adventurous brother. You jumping in that water, scuba diving." But no, yeah, thank you for breaking that down. That's real because I think you got to be centered in your why for if you're going into business or whatever that thing. If you're going to be a public servant, and you gave great, really two great analogies about that because I think a lot of the times people see the success, but they don't see
Mm,
what it costs to become that person,
hmm.
and the things, the discipline, and the things that you have to do to reach that level of success, so that you can do those things that you see other people do when they're successful in business or a successful public servant. Um, and so, thank you for grounding us in that conversation.
Hmm.
Um, through all those experiences, how do those experiences shape your philosophy on relentless excellence? When you sum that all up,
Well, I to sum it up, I'm a man of excellence, right? Anything that I do is going to be done. Some people may see it like, well, Philip, you're really going overboard here. And I don't see me going overboard. I see me saying, well, listen, I haven't gone far enough. I haven't gone to my capacity, right? And so I've learned to become comfortable with that, Taryll, is to become
mm,
comfortable with learning what my capacity is and applying it to anything that I'm in pursuit of, right? It doesn't matter if it's relationships, if it's business, if it's pleasure. I am going to apply my ability to go to the capacity that I want to go in that particular moment, and I won't
mm,
stop until it's done.
nah,
And
love
and,
that.
and yeah.
I'm thinking about your capacity to see that in others too, because you gave the beautiful story earlier of the gentleman
Mhm.
who you shared a piece of your story with,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Who's now doing amazing things.
yes.
And as you continue to leave your legacy, not just with this book, but with others who are, changing their lives, what does it mean to you to see the diamond hidden under life's coals in others?
I'm chuckling because my first business was a nonprofit named Housing Matters of New York, and I brought a building in Brownsville, Brooklyn, and converted it into a transitional living community for formerly incarcerated adult men who were nonviolent drug users. And we won it in 2004. We won an award, and as a result, the journalist from the New York Daily News came and wrote a great article about us, and it was a great moment in my young career as being a social entrepreneur. And he opened up his article saying that Hogan seems to be the kind of guy that could see, the diamond in the rough, right? And he was right, right? Is that, you have that eye, I see, let me get the right polishing rag up and get the right tools, and let me cut and trim and wipe and clean. And before you know it, this thing is going to start shining, and then it's going to become more and more brilliant. And so that's just and that's how I look at anything in life. It's like, okay, is this reaching its fullest potential? And if it's not, what can I do to help it reach its fullest potential?
Mm.
And once I lock in, then I'm in, and I'll do what's necessary to help those individuals or that situation to really maximize what it's meant to be.
Nah, and that young shout out to that young reporter. He was ahead of his time. He was right.
Yeah.
Because I see it every time I talk to you. You had this, canny ability just to see diamonds in the rough,
Mm.
and you know, get enough pressure, purpose, and environment around it to turn that coal into the diamond that it was meant to be. The other reason I think, you know, uh, that gentleman was right about your ability is because I think the diamond that you are, because your challenges didn't break you. They kind of built your blueprint
Hmm.
for success
Hmm.
of who you are and what you build with others. Um, Let me transition from the book a little bit because I want to go into this podcast,
Sure.
and I know me, you could talk forever about the book. Um, Something I'm doing this year in my podcasting is helping people along their journey to see how podcasting can be a really good marketing tool,
Mm.
and do it with marketing with purpose and precision,
Hmm.
and telling your story or reaching your audience, educating and so forth, which I see is now something that you're leaning into.
Hmm.
Um, let's talk about for that for a little bit.
Hmm.
Marketing,
Hmm.
because lot of entrepreneurs struggle here.
Hmm.
What does a right marketing plan actually look like?
Ooh, boy, I hope we got enough time for that one, man.
Let's give them the high level. Let's not don't give them the whole cake. You might want to
Sure.
save some of the rest of that for
Sure.
your own podcast episode, or a course later on.
Well, I think that it's a great question, man. And thank you for asking, and thank you for inviting me back to your show, Terrell, because you're a great host, and it's a joy to be in your company, and I hope your audience appreciates the content that you bring because you come with it each and every time that you turn on that mic, and that as a podcaster, that's one of the requirements that's expected of us, right? Is to come with it each and every time, right? And many people who may not know about what podcasting is all about behind the scenes will realize that there's a lot of work that goes into this, right? And and so to do so consistently day in day out, to go through the processes of preparing for a show is relentless. And so you yourself have you yourself are driven to excellence. And so while I am just a reflection of what it is that you aspire to do, and so do your other guests. So in regard to marketing, and today, I think today, marketing is it's social media. It has accelerated the marketing process to at an unbelievable rate. I mean, when I started 10 years ago, okay, you had a website and you were good. You know what I mean? Now you got to be changing. You not only have a website, but you got to be changing your content on your website, like, have a rotation every 90 days, right? So because information is constantly it's turning, that internet is turning 24/7. So I think one of the things that are a good marketing plan is to make sure that you have a very good social media footprint, right?
Mhm.
And my company, Signing Services of America, is does business to businesses. We don't seek out B2C, we seek out B2B. And so social media footprint, as wonderful as it is, and sometimes a nuisance, you really have to customize your social media footprint to the your clientele, the type of services that you provide, and the industry that you work within. And so, for an example, we don't have a TikTok page. Why?
Mhm.
Because we really don't gravitate to the people that are on TikTok. While TikTok is a good social media platform, we're looking for businesses, And so LinkedIn is a platform that we are involved with heavily. Instagram is a I've learned that Instagram is a very good social media platform. And then of
Hmm.
course YouTube, right? And becoming a podcaster, when we first started, we were promoting the work that we do within the mortgage industry, and those that share that work with us. What I realized in the month of February, well, I decided to talk about my book, and the launching of that book was in February, the end of February. So every episode in February, we talked about the book. Well, I said, okay, that's great, and we got some attention and we got some reviews and comments. But what I didn't realize is that Google was picking up that information, and now it became a part of my social media footprint on the internet. So if you do a research in Google for Relentless Excellence by Phillip Hogan, guess what's going to come up? Not only is it going to be the marketing material that we intentionally prepare for the book, but also the episodes of my podcast when I'm talking about the various chapters of the book. I said, "Oh my goodness, Philip, do you realize what you've been able to do? You are in control of your social media destiny, right?"
Hmm.
So, so I think that this is what I'm saying. How social media is changing every day, and now we're even changing this. Is that we're looking at, we meaning my marketing team and I, we're looking at where are we, what are the sources of our social media presence, and
Hmm.
are those sources integrated, or are they
Yeah.
standing alone? Right. So we realized that, guess what? They're standing alone. There's no integration with the podcast and the website, and there's no integration with LinkedIn and Instagram. Well, what do we need to do to create an integration so wherever a person goes, they will see that information? So we're revamping how we are seeing in the internet, and not being four separate entities, but an integration of information, and that information flows from one entity to the other. So I think that, in answer your question, and I hope that I kind of like get over, but you want to have a very good social media footprint. You want to know who your clients are. You want to know how those clients shop, right? And when they're shopping, what are they shopping with? Who is shopping, right? So for us, you would say, well, okay, Philip, where you had presidents from various title companies on your podcast. Well, that's great. But I've come to realize that the presidents don't make the decisions to hire a company like Signing Services of America. Then I had to find out, well, who is actually the avatar client within a company or within my industry that I should reach out to. And when I found that, now we're flooding all of our marketing material to those individuals, and we're getting some very good responses.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think you gave a really good, complete, well-rounded answer that a lot of people would resonate with, because I do agree with you. With understanding, the strat, because what some of you allude to is the strategy around that marketing plan. And I think a lot of businesses, especially small and mid-sized businesses, they don't really understand how everything's interconnected in their footprint. They just got a couple things out there, right? But are they really working for them, and those things working for them? The other thing, I appreciate you shouting us out with, the 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 consistency that we've been able to do
Hmm.
here at Rise Urban Nation.
Hmm.
And it's not just the consistency, it's the messaging, right?
Hmm.
And that's another part of our strategy, just being the messaging and the consistency that helps build that trust in the market for the ideal people who are trying to connect with us, or um, service a clientele, a customer through us, right? And they
Hmm.
know they can come through us to get this product out there, or get connected with some folks that they want to get connected with
Hmm.
eventually.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's how we kind of align our marketing with purpose. So tell me a little bit more about the podcast.
Hmm.
Are we doing weekly episodes, bi-weekly, monthly?
Hmm.
What can people expect? And I know the first month was the book, but what can people expect when they tune in to this podcast?
Sure. And so, oh my goodness, to put out so the podcast, the name of the podcast is Close the Market Weekly. And when we looked at what was going to be the name, I had to go back and say, okay, well, what industry do I really want to target, right? And I said, well, I spent the last 10 years working within the mortgage industry, so it just made common sense to name the and so to use the podcast for as a forum for people within the mortgage industry to talk about the trends, their roles on the show. And I named it closing market because when you are for the homeowners that's in your audience, when you go to the closing table and have all those documents signed, there are a number of different professionals that are involved with bringing that file to the closing. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
have a person who has run your credit report, you have your loan officer, you have the title agent, you have the notary, you have the attorney. Well, that's what gave me that concept of closed market weekly was born from that closing disclosure settlement statement, which is there are a number of people that are involved with your loan getting to that point. So why not bring those people? Why not go into starting your show with that concept, and then the guests that you're inviting guests are representatives of the mortgage industry, not one particular person or professional, but anyone within the mortgage industry. So thus we named it closing market. And then what is the cadence of the show? Weekly. We couldn't do
Yeah.
monthly because it just we wouldn't really grow. So
Mm-hmm.
we said closing market weekly would be the name of it. And so that was the name. And then my wife and I were looking at logo concepts, and we
Mm-hmm.
come up with a couple of things. And she says, well, you know what, Philip, that's not going to make it. So she knew a source that could design our logo. So we gave them some profiles, and they whipped up a logo that was a killer, and it was perfect. So now we have the name, we have the logo, we have the concept, and then it's just a matter of reaching out to that. In the earlier days, it was my guests were either former or existing clients of Signing Services of America. So it really made it really easy to bring up people on board who were pros and really at the top of their game in the mortgage industry, who could really talk about the industry. And what we wanted to do is create a forum where we're talking with one another. Many times, Taryll, in the mortgage industry, it's such a transaction based business or industry that we don't talk with one another. We just talk to one another. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and hey, signing service, America, I need a notary here at 2 o'clock, and can you get it done? Yes. Okay, click. You know, and you know, or hey, science sir, we need an attorney in South Carolina. Can you make it happen? Yeah, okay. Well, here's the time, date, and place. Make it happen. Click, and that's it.
But
You know, and vice versa. We may reach out to notary. We may reach out to, can you do this for us? Are you available? Whatever, and click. You know, but there's never a moment where we take time to learn more about who we are, what we do, and what's going on within our world. Well, when you're invited to the show, that's what we talk about. You know, what's going on in your world, right? And let's pull back the curtain, give people the opportunity to see what goes on in your world, and then you can share to us what you like to see or what is going on in your world. So that's what this show's about. And
yeah,
we are on weekly. Let's see, we're on weekly, and we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and most other stations or platforms that promote podcasts.
yeah, and for all my listeners, don't worry. When this episode airs, I'm gonna put all the links to that down there so that you can connect after you get off our show to connect to his show.
Thank you.
You know, anytime. I'm thinking too.
Hmm.
Um, you kind of creating a community for the mortgage industry.
Hmm.
It sounds like when you get all these people together, because since everybody has been so transactional, like, has there been a platform that really brings the community together? And it sounds like this could be the platform that really brings the community together. I don't know if you ever thought about it in that way,
Hmm.
but just hearing you talk about it, it makes me think about it in that way.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, because you're right. It is a community, and somebody has to pick up the baton. And I don't know whether my show will grow to the point where we will have the successes that a lot of other podcasts have. There may be another. It may be another podcast show that would build upon this foundation that we've established. And that if that happens, that's fine, right? My goal is that the show is about really providing education and information, right? It's not about entertainment. So,
Yeah.
we don't have the bells and whistles that some other shows have, right? It's all about, having some quality content by the pros who know the industry. One of our guests is Jim O'Donnell, who's the president of
Mhm.
Equity National Title. This man has been in the title business for 33 years. 33
Wow.
years, right? So he's the owner and the president, right? So to have a person with that much experience, you know, on your show for 30 minutes, it's like the epitome of sitting in the living room with your mentor, right? This guy,
Mhm.
he's forgotten more than than you'll ever know, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so he was so that I mentioned his name because that is kind of like the format that we follow, to have our guests come on and really talk about and educate our listeners in terms of what's going on.
Yeah. Walk me through who's the right avatar for this show? Because I feel like so many people can get
Anybody?
good knowledge from this. Like I feel like not just the people starting in the mortgage industry.
Hmm.
I feel like people who are going through their home purchase,
Hmm.
whether first time, second time, third time,
Yes.
could be a good
Hmm.
avatar for this show. But
Hmm.
I mean, when you were going through the process of creating it, who was you had in mind for the right avatar for this show?
Sure. And so we have, since I am the CEO of Signing Services America, we work with a lot of different notaries and notaries and attorneys. The one avatar client would be the notary signing community, or the signing community, right? Is that because I'm using the guests, and not, I should say use, that's not the proper position of putting the guest in, that we're inviting the guests come on board to talk about matters that are important to the industry that we serve. And I think that the signing agents need to hear this information. We also
Yeah,
have investors, real estate investors. But I had a great show with a husband and wife who are real estate investors, and it was a great show. And as a result, we have now begun to have an uptick with real estate investors that are tuning in, because of the show I had with this couple. And so then we also have attorneys. We've had the partner of a law firm come on, and one of the most shows that got us the most views was his show, really, because he talked about, one thing which is important in a real estate transaction is having an attorney. So his whole topic, his whole theme was, the importance of having an attorney involved in a real estate transaction. So
yeah,
so and then, we had an episode where we were talking specifically to the homeowner, right, about the signing, about the loans, the document preparation to a real estate transaction, right. Many homeowners have no idea what to experience when they go into a signing for their property they're about to buy, right? They come in. There's some pens on the table, on the desk, and it's a stack of papers, and they're intimidated because they have to sign all these papers, right? So why not take a few minutes to
I because the paper's about that thick when we signed, and I was like, how many more of these we gotta sign? Like, I feel like I should be reading all of this fine print, but there's no way I'm gonna get through all of it like today if I had to read every single line.
right. So you as a homeowner, right, are extending trust to the people that prepared those documents to ensure that the information is correct and valid. Well, and so we just broke that down, right, and help the audience understand who are the players that's involved to getting the file to that point. What is that file? Why so many documents? And begin to really bring some calmness to the either new homeowner or the homeowner to be. And so you want to know the avatar clients, and so those are our avatar members of the avatar audience. Yeah.
Man, man, I like that. Um,
Hmm.
give me like a something that I can use to lure those avatar folks in. So we got the notary, we got the
Sure.
attorney, we
Sure.
got the investor,
Sure.
and whatever you can think of off the top of here. What are two or three foundational things that you think each of these folks um, should have in place right now as they're looking at let's say if you're talking to a new person
Hmm.
who a new notary, a new attorney, a new investor,
Hmm. Hmm.
2 to 3 things that you think that
Hmm.
they should have in place
Sure.
right
Well,
now.
I think, yeah, thank you for that. And so I think with the notary, what we want to make sure that they're aware of is that you have to, that the skills of being a proactive thinker are very, very important, right? We on the signing services America side, we work with so many different notaries and around the country. We started locally in Georgia, and then over the years we've expanded to now we're nationwide. So we have 65,000 notaries that work for us, and many notaries are coming to the business say, "Oh, I can do this and I can do that." Yeah, you may be able to do the things that you're trained to do, but there's a certain amount of natural skills that you have to come to the table with to be successful. And one of those are being a critical thinker, and then two, being a proactive thinker, right? Proactive meaning that rather than waiting for the bomb to blow up and then decide we got to, put a rescue plan, put a recovery plan together. What can we do to prevent the bomb from going off? Or if we can't prevent the bomb from going off, how do we protect ourselves? How do we minimize the damage once the bomb is going off, right? So that's being a
Mhm,
proactive thinker. So in regard to our clients, right? Those who are title agents and COOs of title companies, I want them to know that Signing Service America is committed to your success, right? Is that we live every day, meaning that we come to work every day to meet the needs of our clients, to reallocate time back to our clients, right?
mhm,
The thing that clients need from us the most is to take off the responsibilities and the burden of managing a signing, right? And if you're working with a reputable company like Signing Service America, then we're literally going to, once you give us that information as to as the time, date, and location where the signing is going to happen, then we take it from there. We manage the process. We hire the notaries. We manage the notaries. Many people think that, okay, well, once you hire a signing agent, then that's it. Well, no, that's not it, because the signing agent may not be familiarized with that particular package. They may be, we oftentimes are signing documents from mortgage products from another state. So the state where the notary is may not be familiar with the documents for where the property is located. So we have to serve as a support mechanism, and
mhm.
and so that's why I'm saying that we reallocate time back to our clients, because if our clients had to hire and then manage a notary, they wouldn't get their primary duties done.
Yeah.
And so then, okay, and then of course for the attorneys, right? And that we have had the partner of a law firm come on, and so the attorneys, and he's speaking to the minds and the ears of the attorneys in the audience that are reinforcing how they are practicing real estate law.
Mm, yeah. I'm over here thinking about not only are you building a marketing plan, you're building relationships, you're building education, you're
Hmm.
building a community.
Hmm.
And so I'm looking at all of these pieces and how they work together so seamlessly and how you've been intentional about it.
Hmm.
And so, and just the gems that you just dropped here for in this short period of time, man, if they're getting that from the podcast and just being part of your orbiting world, and they get to save, and you're saving them time, money, and energy as
Hmm.
well. Like, if I was to be a notary right now, I would just sign up to work with you and listen to all your podcasts so that I can make sure I'm successful. so, so I love how you broke it down all the way from top to bottom, because I think what you're doing with this podcast is not just marketing, it's building community, it's building relationships at scale. Because I think marketing isn't just about attention, it's about connection. And that's
Hmm.
something that you're doing thoughtfully. And so I love that you took me through that whole journey. I know when some people probably listen to it, like, it's like, all right, what does that have to do with marketing? But I connect the dots and I see how you've been able to do this intentionally. And that's due to your amazing leadership and just as you said, continue to build that service of legacy. So let's go into some lessons, and then let's bring it home
Hmm.
to kind of close it out.
Hmm.
What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned about leadership over the years?
Don't be afraid to fail.
Don't be afraid to fail. Is that what that holds most people back? You think that fear
Ye-
of failure?
Yeah, yeah. Don't be afraid to fail. Some Les Brown says you're going to fail your way into success,
Mm,
right? And so there's many times that I've made mistakes in life and in business, and fortunately I recovered, and as a result I'm still in business, and we're like I said, we're celebrating our 10th year. And so
congratulations.
thank you. And so in life and so in business, that's the way it is. And then you know I'm also a risk taker. I've been a risk taker pretty much all my life, and so I'm comfortable taking risk. I'm comfortable, going places, and other people may not want. My wife says all the time. She says, "Philip, you don't sit your ass down someplace." She said, but thank goodness we understand one another, right? And so the even when I'm diving, right, I take risk, right? And
Yeah,
so calculate risk, though. Calculate risk. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, great. So let's see here. Yes, we're talking about, so let's see, other areas of my life that don't be afraid to fail your way to success. And um the person who wrote the forward to my book,
Mhm,
she has a great quote, and wonderful woman, man. She was a not only is she the author of my forward, but she was a mentor when I had my first business. And she said something that was powerful, which is, she was when she got hurt, when she took the position that she had, and I won't give too much away, but when she took the position that she got in a nonprofit in New York, she was shopping one day and saw a refrigerator magnet, and it says this, that don't, how did she say, she's don't yeah, be willing to jump off a cliff and develop the ability to fly on your way down,
mm.
right?
That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
yeah.
That's deep. But that's how business is sometimes.
Mhm.
Like you're building the plane while you're trying to fly it.
Yes.
And so I think so many people who actually jumped into business,
Hmm.
no pun intended, kind of figure that out as they go, because you think you have everything, but you don't have everything. You learn some things along the way.
Hmm.
Um,
And one last thing I want to add to this,
yeah, go
Terrell,
ahead.
I'm sorry, is that when you start your business, begin to think about and possibly plan an exit plan, right?
Mm,
How is this something that you want to pass on? Is it something you want to do forever? Is this something that you would like to pass on to a family member, or is this something that you would like to actually, sell? And or do you want to, bring on some partners so that you can expand? So whatever you envision your exit plan to be, certainly think through that, write it up, and maybe put it up someplace, because there's going to come a time when you're going to have to make that decision. What happens next? And
mhm.
you'll have thought through that process and prepared to make that decision when the time comes.
Yeah, I love that advice because I think a lot of black business owners don't think about that.
Mm.
Whether it be your small mom and pop's business, the grocery store, the restaurant,
Hmm.
to your larger scale business. And even if you have kids, sometimes they think the kids are going to take it on and the kids don't want to take it on. And then there's no succession plan for that business.
Hmm.
And then that business goes out of
That's just
business
right.
because nobody thought about, and it was a good business. The community loved it. They would continue to patronize it if it was there,
Hmm.
but nobody thought of who's going to take this on and make sure this thing lives on after this person passes away.
Hmm.
And I think that's a real conversation that more of us as black entrepreneurs need to have. because we lose a lot of legacy businesses because that's not been done. You know what else has been making me think about this too? Because another mentor of mine just had me look into getting the trust, and I
Hmm.
always thought that was something for much later down the road for older folks. But I now see why it's important,
Hmm.
right? Because
Hmm.
anything can happen, and then when you're working with the lawyers to get the trust done,
Hmm.
they're like, who's gonna get this? All right, if this person passed away, like you're thinking about, they're putting this trust together for like almost 3 generations.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Dang, I haven't thought that far down.
Hmm.
Alright, who's gonna get it after that? And who's gonna take over this trust that's gonna have all these different assets in it, right?"
Hmm.
And and that makes you think about life differently too
Hmm.
when you have to put a trust together. I don't
Hmm.
know, have you been in that process yet of putting the trust together?
Yeah, my wife and I are working on it right now. And
Oh, so you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Heck yeah. You know what I mean? And the trust is certainly more powerful than will. So be very clear, and as business owners, we can put the trust, the business in the trust. And so, well, of course, working with an attorney, they'll prepare you for that. But the point that you're saying here, Terrell, is that you want to be prepared for the future, right? And no one's wishing anybody any kind of harm or demise, but you just never know. And one of the most devastating things that can affect the future of your legacy or your family is something was to suddenly happen to someone, and then all of a sudden, all of these pieces that this person has been working on and compiled is there's no trail to how to access them or what to do with it.
Mhm.
And then it just becomes lost. And now you got families fighting over one another because certain things weren't put in place when a loved one was available to do that.
Yeah, because I'm even thinking about you and your legacy pieces because you got the podcast, you got the book, you got the company,
Mm,
like even putting the book in the trust, right? So when you're long gone, and let's say this book starts to take off when you're long gone,
mm,
who's going to get paid the
mm,
royalties off of this?
hmm.
Where's that money going to go to?
Well,
And
that's a good point because the trust is a living document, right? And so as the trustees, age and grow, then obviously more information needs to be put into the trust.
hmm yeah, and that's what these trusts are for, and that's the conversation that we need to have
I think
more.
one
So
of the
maybe.
I think one of the excuse me one of the boldest moves that I've done in business is and my wife is my wife, but she's not my business partner with this business. She's a business partner with another business venture. But I brought her to the bank and made her a signator to all of the company bank accounts.
hmm
So that she has access to the funds, and when whatever needs to be dispersed can be dispersed because she's in a position of authority, of power. And I think in
hmm
black families sometimes we don't like to share that information. Oh, I don't want her to know how much I got. I don't want him to know how much I got. That's not the way to look at it. That, if you're husband and wife, then you have to sit down and have a meeting of the minds and come up with a plan and then execute that plan.
hmm I agree. I agree. Exactly. Um, Earlier when you were talking about being a risk taker
Mm,
and jumping into scuba diving, I've
mm.
been holding this thought like, do your wife be jumping in the ocean with you?
No,
Or she tell you to go sit your ass down somewhere?
no. So no, she doesn't dive, unfortunately. And we
Or for her, maybe she's saying, fortunately.
well, I tell you one thing, I'm hoping and wishing and praying, right? And that she would decide to die because it would be a wonderful thing to do to share something that's so divine and serene with my wife.
Oh, so to Mrs. Hogan,
Yes.
you know, I know you probably not the risk taker Philip is, but he would love to experience this with you if you would be bold one day and take that leap of faith with him into the ocean. It would make his heart just overflow with joy.
Well, thank you, man. Now we got to make sure when this edit is this edition is episode is prepared. I'm gonna make sure it's sent to her, so because she'll know that there's a segment in the show specifically for you from Taryell.
Specifically for you.
Yeah.
And this is my he didn't put me up to this. I took it upon myself to invite you in. I'm not calling you out, I'm calling you in.
But see, Terrell, see, this is the power, man, of being a podcaster, right? You control your own content.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
and that's the thing about being an entrepreneur is like, we control our content, right? If it's in business, I can control, how much we're going to do, when we're going to do it, how is it going to get done, when is it going to get
But
done, and how much we're going to get paid to get it done, right?
yeah.
All the control is on us. And same thing when it comes to being a podcaster, right? Is that, if you work with somebody else, cut it, and no, we got to edit that out because that's not content related. But it's your show, so you can say what you want, how you want, and let it go in
Yeah.
any direction. So
Yeah.
I'm saying that for your audience, for those of you that are thinking about being a podcaster, yeah, we're having a lot of fun. But at the end of the day, we're in control of how this show goes. And you can too.
Yeah. And it's good when it's done right for marketing, for um helping people see another side of your brand and
Hmm.
building a relationship with them where it shortens the relationship time because now they've grown to have a relationship listening to you.
Mm.
And now, about time they get to you, they feel like they already know you and they want to do business with you too.
Hmm.
And people don't talk about that enough. And if you don't want to start your own podcast, you can. There's a way to get on more podcasts
Hmm.
too
Hmm.
to also develop that for your organization.
Hmm.
Want to double back real quick
Sure.
before we close up because and this one is a multi-prong approach question
Okay.
that to go to the wifey and go to all the analogies that we talked to you earlier about taking risk, uncertainty, and all that. um how do you lead through uncertainty, especially when you're trying to build a plan while you fly? You may you may not know what's going to happen when you jump off that boat and go scuba diving in the ocean. um, but to trust the process and know that you're gonna build it on the way down. You're gonna have everything you need.
Yeah,
How
I
do you
think
lead through uncertainty?
sure. I think that, Philip Hogan, the businessman, when he started is not Philip Hogan, the businessman 10 years in.
Hmm.
And now I have a plan, right? And I do my best to, let me, case in point, right, is that, you know for the entrepreneurs in your audience. So one of the things that we do, that I learned to do over the years, is to prepare a budget the previous year for the incoming year. So we look at, we in the final quarter, we look at the budget, and we use the information from that budget to be a template for the incoming year. And then we decide, okay, well, was the entity, this particular entity, was it useful or was it not? Is it something we need to put into the budget for the new year or not? And and then and so that now we also will work by quarters. Okay, what are our goals to accomplish for per month in the first quarter, second month, third month in the first quarter, et cetera, et cetera. And so instead of looking at the entire year and say, okay, we got the entire year to accomplish certain things, now we're working by quarters. Okay, what do we expect to, like with the book launch? All right, we wanted to launch the book in the first quarter of 2026, and so we
Hmm.
accomplished that. And so those are the things that I would share with your audience, is that, devise a plan and do your best to stick to that plan. And then, also leave room for some adjustments into the plan, because everything's not going to roll out the way you wanted to as you envisioned it. And there may be some
Hmm.
setbacks, right? So we expected to have a certain amount of new clients on board in this time of the year, and we're a little short of that mark. And so, okay, once you are completed the first quarter, now you want to do some evaluations. What worked, right? What didn't work, right? What do we strike off as being something that was completed in the first quarter of the new year? What do we need to carry forward into the into the next quarter of the new year? And then what do we need to kind of like say, well, you know what? We thought that this is something we could do, but we realized that this is not doable for us, right? And the
Mm,
final thing I want to leave you with is that when you're developing your budget for the new year, you want to certainly allocate. Well, what kind of marketing do you want to do? Who do you want to do your marketing? What kind of marketing do you want to do? And what is it going to cost you? And that's your budget. That's your line item, right? And if it's $4,000 or $15,000, whatever the cost is, so be it. But then speak to the people, the vendors that's actually going to do your marketing. So when you put that number in, your budget is set and approved. Then you stick to it, right? So if it's
mm,
$5,000 in the budget for marketing, then okay, then $5,000 is it, right?
mm.
And that way the money's there opposed to you trying to scramble to put it all together because you haven't prepared for it. So make a plan and stick to it.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so before we wrap up with this last question for
Sure.
all my listeners, we went through, you know, preparing a budget,
Hmm.
so we could be successful business,
Hmm.
and especially successful in our marketing.
Hmm.
We ran through a nice little strategy on marketing via through podcasting, social media.
Hmm.
We even devised a plan for how we, build legacy, right? Whether it be doing it through your trust, coming up with your exit strategy and plan for your business today. I think we covered it all today. We went all around the world
Hmm.
today, and we got some real life lessons along the way
Yeah,
too.
yeah, we did.
So I say the only thing else we close out to is, you know, now that we've gotten here, baby, what does legacy mean to you today?
Wow. Well, legacy is what does it mean to me today is, you know, being remembered as a person who, well, categorically, right, is that I'm a man of service, and I believe in that we all should be of service to one another, and I believe that young men and women should spend the time in the military 2 4 years and as a requirement because I think it really helps to build structure and it builds and helps you to become disciplined and it be able to be of service to people. Because I think sometimes what I'm seeing is that sometimes people are becoming a little bit selfish, right? Well, me,
Mhm,
me, 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 and what about the other person? So
mhm,
my one demonstration of my legacy would be Philip has been a person of service. And when in scuba diving, right? I love to scuba dive, and I'm a treasurer to my scuba diving club, and I'm also serve on the outreach committee. So we are invited to schools when these schools are doing career days. They invite us in to come in to talk about how students could become scuba divers and get a career in the aquatic industry that requires for them to be able to scuba dive. So we come in with my camera and all our gear, and we are really promoting scuba diving to these children who never saw a black person in a scuba diving outfit, yet alone coming into their school. So that's a way of how I provide service to my community and to my family. And so the other moment of legacy is that Philip was a person who was kind, and he was generous, and that he loved his family and he loved the people around him, and that he was about uplifting people, and not suppressing people, not trying to suppress someone's spirit or energy or thoughts. So I can go on and on, but I want to stop
no,
there.
that's perfect. That was perfect. That was perfect. And to all my listeners who are listening to
Mm.
this, I kind of wrote it down as it came to me. Um, are you being a person of service? How are you servicing your family and your community? Those are the things that come to me in thought. And some of the other things we heard today is, are you building for visibility or impact? Um, are you talking to people? Are you building community? Or are you building with them? Or are you talking at them? Right.
Mm.
because real success isn't just about how high you go, it's about how deep you're willing to grow.
Mm.
Philip, this has been powerful. Thank you as always coming out here, just dropping so many great gems. You've reminded us that success isn't just about strategy, it's about character, it's about resilience, it's about purpose. Um, Before we go, tell people where they can find you, where can they go get the book,
Hmm.
where can they tune into the podcast one more time.
Sure.
I promise everybody I'm gonna put all these links in the bottom of the show notes if you're driving. I
Right.
just want them to give it to you one more time because it's been a while in the episodes that since we dropped this, since we had some great conversation. So
Sure.
putting it back here
Sure.
so you can get to it.
This is the best podcast I've been on, Taryell. Right, you're a
Oh,
fantastic host, man. Your audience is so fortunate to have you, and I hope that they, like, share, and subscribe, and brag about you to others to enforce them. You need to strangle them, saying you need to sit down and listen and listen to Terrell, man, because you create a very warm environment for a conversationalist like us to come on and talk about. And so people can find me at philiphogan.com. It's philliphogan.com. There you can read a excerpt of my book. You can order the book through Amazon. And then if you'd like to book me for a guest on your show or to speak to your community, you can also make those arrangements on my website. So that website again is www.philliphogan.com. philliphogan.com.
and to give them the book and the podcast too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and the name of the book is Relentless Excellence. And again, you'll see the cover on the website, and there's an excerpt from the book where you can read, and hopefully that'll draw you into wanting to read the book. And the name of the book is Relentless Excellence: A Story of Family, Business Building, and Value-Driven Leadership. That could be purchased on Amazon KDP. And then the name of my podcast is Closing Market Weekly. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and all other platforms that host podcasts.
Thank you, and don't worry. As always, I'll put them in the show notes. If you're driving, don't feel like you need to swerve over to the side of the road just now. Just save it, and then it'll be there for you when you get to your destination. All right, family. If this episode spoke to you, make sure you subscribe. He said it first. I didn't pay him to say that. Share it with a fellow entrepreneur. Leave us a review because here at Rise Every Nation, we don't just build businesses, we build legacy. So until then, unite, uplift, and ignite. Peace.